I have played exactly one game like Arco, and that was a lovely piece of abandonware called Flamberge. But even that isn't really like Arco. This is a rare thing, a turn-based tactical RPG that somehow feels like a bullet hell with pause. Arco released in 2024 and is a fantasy game grounded in the American colonial period, but from the perspective of the indigenous Mesoamericans. Featuring lo-fi graphics and clocking in at a staggering 635 megabytes, it's really punching hard for such a little bitty thing. Let's get into the combat, because it's what sold me on the game. Combat consists of two phases, planning and active. In the planning phase, we can see our enemy's intentions, where they're moving, who they're targeting, and adjust accordingly, dodging bullets, closing in with a knife when they reload, and so on. And then we start the turn, everything plays out, and we repeat. There's two resources to manage: health, which functions as normal, and magia, are action points consumed with every attack, but replenished slightly when moving, or more rapidly if we stand still and skip a turn. It's a clever little design that keeps the player doing hit and runs and prevents that toe-to-toe action spam that many turn-based games devolve into. The best part is that everything on screen is immediately legible enough that a single turn can take only a few seconds. Most of my combat sections were over in maybe 5 minutes. There's all your standard combat modifiers at play: rooting, silencing, stunning, poisoning, and a decent amount of environmental hazards that you can take advantage of. Towards the end, the game starts to feel very fast-paced, even though the majority of action is being decided in a pause state, which is quite an accomplishment. The combat is also fairly difficult. Although if you aren't into that, there are accessibility options that let you skip combat or give you infinite dynamite to chuck. There's also no penalty for failing a combat. When you die, you can restart the sequence and change up your consumable loadout, full heal your characters, or just leave. It's kind of odd for a game with such intentionally difficult combat to also make losing meaningless. As we progress, we gain XP that allows us to specialize our characters, gaining new attacks or utility abilities. This is a pretty bare-bones RPG system with itemization cut down to basic consumables and out-of-combat restoration items. It works given the relatively small scale of the game, only about 8 hours to complete a run. Constant gear upgrades would probably feel out of place in this system, and the lack of inventory management puts the focus more on the exploration and the unfolding story. As far as that story, Arco has a bit of an ensemble cast. There are 5 chapters total, with the first 4 chapters introducing main characters and the final chapter bringing them all together in a quest for vengeance. There's a lot of exploration, secrets, and my personal favorite, when some random item you've been hanging on to for 6 hours suddenly comes in handy. There's plenty of room for player choice in here, with a fairly simple morality system in the form of guilt. If you do evil or questionable things as you progress the story, your characters will gradually be haunted by the ghosts of their action, represented in the combat sections by literal ghosts, which pursue the character and deal damage if they touch. Another clever bit of mechanics here: the ghosts move during the pause phase, adding an additional time pressure to the combat. All of the mechanics in this game are really custom tailored to deliver surprisingly engaging turn-based combat. Overall, Arco is innovating turn-based combat, a mechanical genre that I generally dislike, and simultaneously letting us explore a colorful fantasy world rooted in South American folklore. I'm a huge fan of games taking place in non-Tolkien fantasy settings, so this is pretty much made for me. And yet, I really liked a ton of the individual elements of the game, and even at this moment, I remember the whole experience fondly. But I usually go back and round up all the achievements for a game before I do a review. Sometimes even for games I actively dislike. I mean, hell, I 100%ed Days Gone, and I really did not like that one. But I just can't bring myself to replay Arco. I'm not sure why. On the trusty pain scale, I'd give Arco a slightly painful. I'd recommend it to anyone else who also likes the idea of turn-based combat more than the reality. And it's also pretty nice to play a game that isn't 100 hours long for once. Well, that's all for my 40-second review. Thanks for tuning in yet again. Another time, another place, another video. See ya!